Z Junkie. Today's podcast is on forgiveness, which is a crucial spiritual principle. It's a spiritual principle of the ninth step. The concept of forgiveness is something I just could have never got with. I just could never get with it. For just about 50 years, I just could not get with forgiveness. And it doesn't matter the reasons why I didn't get with forgiveness. I just refused to get with forgiveness. Steps that gave me clarity on why that was so. No forgiveness in my life meant I could keep my resentments brewing, and my resentments was a stronghold for my resentments, and my resentments, would fuel my using. Because I would set using institutions up to treat me a certain way so I could resent your ass. Excuse the French, but I have no other word for it. So it would justify my ways and means of doing and finding and getting more. It just wanted to have nothing to do with forgiveness. It served the addiction by way of choice I make my own or not. When I make it my own, it serves the addiction. Matter of fact, resentments is probably the most closely aligned thing to the addiction. And it's the main fuel that perpetuates the high price for low living as an addict. So that was my solution. Just never forgiving. I just couldn't understand it. So the steps helped me understand, especially when I got to that ninth step. The steps are in order. They're for a reason. It's really, really important to get the honesty, the acceptance, and the surrender of that first step. Understood in actual application and the feel of some lifestyle in that. Until we get to the second step, that open-mindedness, willingness, and that hope in that second step. The same thing, to get an understanding, some application, and some lifestyle in that. And then moving on to the third, which is that faith, trust, and commitment. The same thing, getting some understanding, application, and some lifestyle going on before we move to the fourth. And the courage. In the fourth, same thing with the fourth. The perseverance in the fifth, same thing in the fifth. The tenacity, the tolerance in the sixth, same thing. The humility in the seventh, same thing. Brotherly love, same thing in the eighth. Get some understanding, some application, and some lifestyle going on before moving into the ninth, which is forgiveness. And the 10th, which is self-discipline. That daily inventory, so we don't get caught up in resentments again. So my concept, or my unwillingness, to even entertain the idea of forgiving, kept me using for decades. Because the addiction knows that forgiveness, it ends resentments. And if it ends resentments, it's going to end what's been keeping us stuck like Chuck in the only solution we knew, which is whatever our drug of choice is. Be it drugs, food, alcohol, gambling, sex, codependent relationships, work, money, whatever it may be. It kept us in our solution. It kept the addiction by way of choice we make our own or not. We kept making it our own because we didn't have another solution. It was terrifying to think that we'd have to put down our only solution. For me to put down drugs was terrifying. And to take a solution away from somebody without offering them another one is inhumane. Once again, taking a solution away from somebody without offering another, is inhumane. It's funny. This guy, I went to this comedian show the other night, and this guy was like, hey, and he was talking about, it was an addiction, comedian show, and this guy was like, picked somebody out of the audience and said, Oh, well, how much time you have. The guy was stuck on time once again, because time does not equal recovery. The increase in the conscious contact with the God of our understanding and what we do with that and how we work in that, that's what equals recovery, okay? Not time. Time has nothing to do with it, okay? I can sit around with my thumb up my butt for the next 20 years, and it doesn't mean I have recovery going on. It means I have abstinence going on, and a lot of other things are taking hits in my life. A lot of things I see in the fellowship, okay, because there's no desire other than to get into urban legend. Let me get back to what he was saying. So what he says was picked out this guy. All right, he happened to have 9 months, okay, in whatever it was that he was dealing with, and the guy was like, let me give you a shortcut, because the guy that was speaking had 27 years, right? As if he arrived some damn where. Just for today keeps me from ever thinking I arrived some damn where, okay? Because if I think I arrived some damn where, it's the beginning of the end. And my solution, by driving to set my arm, is not far away. So here's urban legend, because you hear a lot of it. Yeah, take the cotton out of your ears, he told the kid, and stick it in your mouth. And when you come in, just shut up and listen. That's interesting, because, after decades of being around recovery, years of in recovery, okay, there's one thing urban legends haven't. There's one thing urban legends have. They require no work. Telling somebody to take the cotton out of their ears and shove it in their mouth requires no work on their part. That's funny, because I was thinking, if you really want to show this guy a shortcut, why don't you give him your number and guide him through the 12 steps, which you haven't mentioned once. Just saying. Forgiveness. So there it was. So what did I do with that? Okay. So what did I do with that resentment? How do I get to a forgiveness with that resentment? Okay. That went on with that guy speaking, because I caught one, okay? It's not that I don't get them. It's that I can't harbor them. Once again, it's not that I don't get them. I can't harbor them. And forgiveness is the key in the release of them. But first, I have to get back to that first step and honestly accept my end in whatever it is in which resentment I just caught. And then I need to surrender that. Completely defeated, praying only for the forgiveness and the knowledge and the will of the God of my understanding to be carried out in me. And if that doesn't do it, I share it. Okay? I share it with my sponsor or my spiritual advisor. Okay? Because as we speak, I just had to let a sponsor go yesterday. Okay? Because I need to move on. Okay? I was in the middle of a 4th step yesterday, second round on my step work, and the sponsor couldn't get why I don't harbor resentments. What? Harboring resentments is the first thing that's going to send us out. Getting them, we're going to get them all the time. But in the seventh step, it's that humility. Okay, removing our shortcomings. The God of my understanding said in my 7th step that my defects were going nowhere. However, if I get back into the first step and honestly accept them and surrender them, okay, when I'm in them, okay, completely defeated, praying only for his forgiveness, only for the knowledge of his will and his power to be carried out in me, never once has he failed to remove one. For years, okay? His defects aren't going there. That one might pop up again, but there's a relationship. If he wanted robots, he would have created them. There's a relationship. And the God of my understanding is not codependent. Okay, on earth as it is in heaven. If he's talking to me and I turn my back on him, well, it's the same thing if you were talking to me and I turn my back on you. Okay? He doesn't get into codependency. There's a relationship. And the relationship of me, in order for those to be removed, is I need to get into the honest acceptance. Okay? And what it is that I'm in. Okay, well, so what was my end? I want to knock his block off. Okay? You understand? And it took a series of acceptance and sharing it at my home group and sharing it with people, okay, that it's alleviated now. You know, I'm not hauling that guy around on my back no more. You know, and if I did, it'd be by way of my own choosing, by way of choice that I'm doing that. But it says, from when these steps were first written in the first fellowship, that harboring resentments is the first thing that's going to turn us back to our solution that we had in active addiction, which was our drug of choice. So it's not about not getting them, but and then the 10th step to clean it up. You know, 10th step. You got to do a 10th step. You got to be in a 10th step each day. You got to do a personal inventory. Wrong, properly admitted it. See, my first 4th step was 110 pages long. But there's principles that I mentioned in here that need to get into understanding, which can only come from true application of them and into lifestyle. Of course, my next 4th step is not going to look anything like my first if I'm living the program. So my question was this to the sponsor, okay? That's my question, how I don't have resentments here, okay? If I was working through one right now, I put one down, okay? But I just told you how I don't walk around harboring resentments. But now this sponsor had over a quarter century, okay? Okay, so you have to tell me how you survive recovery while harboring resentments between each 4th step. You have to tell me that. Couldn't, okay? There's no answer for it, okay? And if you do harbor them between each 4th step, what magically do you do in that 4th step that releases you from that resentment in which you've been harboring, which you couldn't have done when you got it a year ago or 2 years ago or however long it's been since your last 4th step? Where's the forgiveness? See, you know, getting back to the forgiveness, okay? The forgiveness and the resentments are so closely linked. I went off on resentments for a minute there and how it is to not walk around harboring them, okay? Because it's one of the cornerstones of the addiction, if you will, that drives us out. It's the addiction's most powerful tool to drive us out. Not to get them. No, we're going to get them. To harbor them. To harbor them, there's a difference. And between the 7th, the 10th, and the 1st step, okay, I don't harbor them anymore. So my character defects in the first round of steps that I had in step 6, they didn't go nowhere. I don't have to write a new list. Okay? They're all there. They didn't go nowhere. My solution in dealing with them is what changed. And that's why for the first time since 1978, while not being locked down, is why I'm counting years instead of days. Because I couldn't get with that. I couldn't get with forgiveness. Forgiveness is for me, not for the other person. You know, and another crucial with forgiveness. Hardly, okay, when there's a forgiveness made either with someone or myself, okay, because when I forgive somebody once, by the next time I forgive somebody else, I've already had to forgive myself about 100 times. So, when I forgive, because another reason why I couldn't get for forgiveness, this is crucial. Another reason why I couldn't get with forgiveness is because every time I forgive somebody, I was allowing them to walk all over me again. Or every time I forgive myself, I just went ahead and did it again. Okay, so either I was getting walked all over by somebody, or I was walking all over myself. Primarily, people were walking over me. Profoundly, I walked all over myself. Like I said, if you did half of what I did to myself, I'd kill you. Okay. So why? Well, the God of my understanding said, you know, because you hear forgiveness all the time in the fellowship, but you're not hearing anybody saying you got to set a boundary. Okay? I'm not going to blanket, and I'm not going to say every forgiveness one does needs to have a boundary, because if I blanket anything, it's going to come back to bite me in the ass, okay, before I even get done speaking it, All right? So that doesn't work. But a majority of the forgivenesses with others and myself need some type of boundary. They need some type of boundary set with them. Okay? My boundaries are going to be crossed. Okay? The God in my understanding said, see, when you set boundaries, they're going to be crossed. Just know that. As long as you're not the one crossing them. As long as you're not the one crossing them. So when I forgive myself, I have to look at what it is that I forgave. And there has to be a behavioral change. And usually for that behavioral change to happen, I need a boundary of some sort. From, like I said, 0, no boundary, and a few, but the majority have to have some boundary between that and complete abstinence from what it was that I would needed to get into forgiveness of. The boundaries are crucial. They will be crossed as long as I'm not the one crossing them. You know, it's fertile ground. Forgiveness is step 9. Forgiveness, okay, is what the amends process is about. Okay? Forgiveness is what the amends process is about. Because I need to get into that to make the 180 behavioral change. Behavioral change is the amends. The behavioral change can only come if I'm forgiving the behavior that existed in the first place, with a boundary. Okay, I have complete absolute boundaries. Matter of fact, the members that are walking on planet Earth that are left in my family have complete absolutes on them just for today, until the God of my understanding gives me a heads up to do something different. Okay, there needed to be a complete absolute boundary. Okay, for me to get any other clarity, okay, from that situation, okay, because there's all active use in that, and I can't deal with that. I can't handle that, because the boundaries are important because of the behavioral change, right? It gives fertile ground for the behavioral change. Okay, so the forgiveness of the old behavior, okay, the setting of the boundaries, so it sets me up for fertile ground not to repeat it. I have a better chance of not repeating that old behavior. And with others, because let me tell you, a sound of somebody's voice, okay, 2,000 miles away through a phone could throw me back right into old behavior. Okay. Not with everybody. I'm talking where these complete abstinence boundaries just for today need to be put in place. So I could keep on in the behavioral change in which I made by the amends, by the forgiveness of the old behavior. Okay? A sound of somebody's voice, thousands of miles away through a phone, could throw me right back into old behavior. Somebody's name being mentioned could throw me back into old behavior. That's why boundaries. I mean, that's how sick those relationships were. Okay? That's how sick they were. And I don't have the spiritual fitness to deal with some relationships. Okay? And that's why I need a complete abstinence boundary set up. That's why a complete abstinence boundary must be set up, because I don't have the spiritual fitness. Okay, because just the sound of their voice throws me back into old behavior, which will kill me. So the forgiveness of the old behavior, this is an amends. That's why forgiveness and the amend process is the 9th step. Okay, which deals with the resentments that are going on in the 4th. Okay, in your first round of steps, profoundly. Forgiving the old behavior has to become, okay? Forgiving the behavior of another has to be. Forgiving of the old behavior with me, there needs to be a boundary. Forgiving the old behavior of somebody else, there needs to be a boundary. These boundaries may be crossed as long as I'm not the one crossing it. So I'll wrap it up like this. The amends process. and the spiritual principle of forgiveness in the 9th step. It goes like this with this addict. I need to forgive my old behavior. And I need all the principles that came about and all the steps prior to this 9th step in order to speak so freely about the 9th step. Okay? You know, I've been in this for years and I actively live my program each and every day. That means I recommit back to it. I'm in the 1st step each and every day. Forgiveness of my old behavior, setting a boundary up so I don't repeat it, brings me into the new behavior, which is the 180 change from the old. There's no greater amends than a 180 change in behavior. If there's a 180 change in behavior, there's a perception change. And there's the miracle. You don't have to wait around until the miracle happens. Every time there's a perception change, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Recovery equals how I increase and nurture my conscious contact with the God of my understanding. Period.